The classroom on the massive space station was unlike anything Lisa Keller had ever seen. The walls glowed with a soft blue light. Strange symbols floated in the air above each desk. 30 students from 20 different planets sat in curved seats designed to fit bodies of all shapes and sizes. Lisa took a deep breath. She was the only human in the room. The only human in the entire advanced mathematics program at the Galactic Academy. Her hands shook slightly as she placed her tablet on the desk in front of her. "You seem nervous," said a voice to her left. Lisa turned to see a tall, thin alien with pale green skin and large, almond-shaped eyes. The translator badge on Lisa's collar identified the speaker as Nari, a student from the Cygnus system. "A little," Lisa admitted. "It's my first day." "It is all of our first day," Nari said with a gesture that Lisa's translator interpreted as friendly. "But you are the only human. That must be hard," Lisa nodded. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 20 years ago. Humans were still seen as newcomers, barely out of their planetary cradle. Getting accepted to the Academy had been nearly impossible. The admission board had rejected her application 3 times before finally giving her a chance. "Attention. Students." The voice came from the front of the room. The teacher entered, and Lisa couldn't help but stare. Professor Zordix was tall, at least 7 feet, with iridescent scales covering her body that shifted colors as she moved. She had 3 violet eyes that blinked independently of each other and 6 long arms that moved with graceful precision. The Arcturians were known throughout the galaxy for their mathematical brilliance and their ancient civilization. They were also known for their pride. "I am Professor Zordix," she said, her scales shimmering with a blue-green light that Lisa would later learn indicated authority. "You are here because you represent the best mathematical minds of your respective worlds." Her 3 eyes scanned the room, and Lisa felt a chill when all 3 focused on her for a moment too long. "Most of your worlds, at least." The professor added. Several students made sounds that the translator couldn't quite interpret, but Lisa recognized as laughter. She kept her face calm, though her cheeks burned. She was used to this. The Academy had only accepted her because of Earth's diplomatic pressure. No one actually believed a human could compete at this level. "Today we begin our study of mathematical systems across the galaxy," Professor Zortix continued. "Something that all advanced civilizations mastered millennia ago." Again, her eyes lingered on Lisa. During the next 2 hours, the professor reviewed concepts that made Lisa's head spin. The mathematical notation on the holographic display was unlike anything she had seen before. Several students asked questions using terms that her translator couldn't convert properly. When the class ended, Lisa remained in her seat, staring at the notes she had taken. Most were question marks and half-finished equations. "Struggling already?" "Earth student?" Professor Zortix appeared beside her desk. The other students had left. "The notation is new to me," Lisa admitted, "but I'll learn it. Will you?" The professor's scales shifted to a dark purple that the translator didn't explain. "Humans have only recently discovered interstellar travel. Your mathematical systems are ... basic at best." Lisa felt a flash of anger but pushed it down. "With respect, Professor, different doesn't mean inferior. Earth's mathematics may be younger than Arcturian systems, but we've made remarkable progress in a short time." "Remarkable for humans, perhaps." The professor's scales rippled. "Let me be direct, Earth student. You are here because of politics, not merit. I have taught for 300 years, and I have never had a student from a species as young as yours succeed in my class." Lisa straightened her back. "Then I'll be the first." Professor Zortix made a sound that the translator didn't catch. "We shall see. For tomorrow, review the material on numerical-based systems. It might help you understand why your species struggled with simple concepts for so long." After the professor left, Lisa sat alone in the vast classroom. She opened her personal tablet and connected to the Academy's knowledge base. The information on numerical systems was extensive, covering everything from the 3 base mathematics of the aquatic Delphinians to the 27 base system used by the crystalline hive minds of Tau Ceti. Lisa smiled slightly. What Professor Zordix didn't know was that Lisa hadn't been chosen randomly to represent Earth, back home. She had been coding since she was 8 years old. By 14, she had developed quantum algorithms that improved Earth's early AI systems. She understood binary, hexadecimal, and other numerical bases better than most adults. She had earned her place here, whether the professor believed it or not. For the next week, Lisa stayed up late every night, studying harder than she ever had. Before, she learned the standard galactic notation and practiced converting equations from Earth's decimal system. She read about the history of mathematics on different worlds and was surprised to learn that many species had gone through a binary phase in their development. Just as Earth had with its early computers during classes, she stayed quiet, absorbing everything. She noticed that Professor Zordix rarely called on her, focusing instead on students from older civilizations. The few times Lisa raised her hand, the professor would acknowledge her with obvious reluctance. After one particularly difficult lesson, Nari approached Lisa in the hallway. "You are doing better than she expected," the green alien said. "What do you mean?" "Professor Zortix told the faculty you would fail within the first month. Several teachers have placed bets on when you will leave." Lisa stopped walking. "They're betting on me failing?" Nari's expression changed to what Lisa's translator identified as embarrassment. "I should not have told you this. I apologize." "No, I'm glad you did." Lisa adjusted her bag on her shoulder. "At least now I know where I stand." That night, as she sat in her small quarters reviewing the material for the next day's class, Lisa felt a new determination. She wasn't just studying for herself anymore. She was studying for Earth to prove that humans belonged in the galactic community. The next day, Professor Zordix announced their first major assignment. "You will complete these proofs using multiple numerical bases," she explained as the problems appeared on each student's display. "This will test your understanding of how mathematical truths remain constant regardless of the symbols we use to express them." Lisa looked at the problems. They weren't actually as difficult as she had feared. In fact, many reminded her of the conversion problems she had solved when first learning to code. The professor moved around the room. "You have one standard rotation to complete this task," she announced, "though I suspect some of you might require additional time to grasp the concepts." Her eyes flicked toward Lisa. Lisa ignored the jab and focused on the problems. The format of the answer field was somewhat ambiguous. After considering for a moment, she made a decision. She would work through each problem methodically, translating her answers into binary, the system she knew best from her years of programming. As her fingers moved across the display, converting complex answers into long strings of 1 south and 0 south. Lisa felt confident for the first time since arriving at the academy. The elegant simplicity of binary had always appealed to her. There was something beautiful about reducing everything to its most fundamental form, yes or no, on or off, 1 or 0. Little did she know that this decision would lead to both her greatest humiliation and her greatest triumph at the Galactic Academy. Lisa submitted her assignment and slept better that night than she had since arriving at the academy. The familiar process of working with binary had calmed her nerves. For a few hours, she hadn't felt like an outsider. Numbers were numbers. No matter what planet you came from, the next morning, she entered the classroom with more confidence. Several students nodded to her, and Nari even moved over to make space for her in the front row. "How did you find the assignment?" Nari asked. "Not too difficult," Lisa said. "The concepts were similar to some programming work I did back on Earth." "Programming?" A student behind them joined the conversation. The translator identified him as Velk from a gas giant in the Orion sector. "Is that not a task for machines?" "Not mathematicians?" Lisa smiled. "On Earth, humans and machines work together. I wrote my first code when I was 8 years old." Velk's 4 eyes blinked in what seemed like surprise. "You communicate directly with machines? Interesting." "Perhaps. Humans are not as students. Attention." Professor Zortix entered the room, cutting off their conversation. Her scales today were a bright orange that Lisa hadn't seen before. "I have reviewed your assignments." The room grew quiet. First evaluations were important at the academy. They often set the tone for the entire term. Most of you demonstrated adequate understanding, the professor continued. A few showed true insight. She nodded toward a student from Vega whose solution had apparently impressed her. Lisa waited for her name, hoping for at least a neutral assessment. However, Professor Zortik's voice changed, and her scales shifted to a deep red. One submission was particularly disappointing. Lisa's stomach tightened. She knew before the professor even spoke again. Earth student, Professor Zortik said, looking directly at Lisa with all three of her violet eyes. Perhaps you would care to explain your answers to the class? The main display at the front of the room suddenly showed Lisa's assignment. Long strings of 1 south and O south filled the screen where mathematical symbols should have been. I solved the equations and converted the answers to binary notation, Lisa explained, trying to keep her voice steady. Binary? Professor Zortix repeated. Her scales rippled in patterns that Lisa's translator identified as amusement and contempt. How charmingly primitive. Several students made sounds that translated as laughter. Even Nari seemed to be hiding a smile. In case the rest of the class is unfamiliar with such an outdated system, the professor continued, binary is a base 2 numerical system that uses only 2 symbols, 0 and 1. It was common among species in their early technological development, particularly for rudimentary computing devices. Lisa felt her face grow hot. On Earth, binary is the foundation of our computing systems, she tried to explain. It's not primitive, it's... Thank you, that will be enough, Professor Zortix interrupted. I asked for mathematical proofs, not computer code. This is a mathematics class, not a history of primitive technology course. More laughter filled the room. Lisa saw Velk whispering something to another student while glancing at her. Perhaps next time you will provide your answers in a proper mathematical format, the professor said. I have given you a failing grade for this assignment. You may attempt to redo it for partial credit if you wish. Lisa stared at her desk, too embarrassed to look up. She had been so confident in her approach. Binary made perfect sense to her. It was clean, efficient, and precise. But now she realized that what seemed advanced on Earth was considered primitive here. Now, let us move on to today's lesson, Professor Zortix said, dismissing Lisa's work entirely. We will be discussing multidimensional equation mapping. For the rest of the class, Lisa barely heard a word the professor said. She took notes. Mechanically, but her mind kept returning to the humiliation of seeing her work displayed and mocked in front of everyone. She had failed not just herself but Earth. She had confirmed what everyone already believed, that humans weren't ready for the Galactic Academy when class ended. Lisa gathered her things quickly, hoping to leave before anyone could speak to her, but Nari stopped her at the door. Do not be discouraged, the green alien said. The professor is hard on everyone at first. She didn't humiliate anyone else in front of the class, Lisa pointed out. Nari's expression changed to something Lisa couldn't interpret. True, that was unusual. It's because I'm human, Lisa said. She's made up her mind about me already. Perhaps, Nari admitted, but you can change her mind. Many of us are curious about Earth mathematics. Your binary system is different? The difference is not always inferior. Lisa appreciated the attempt at comfort, but it did little to ease the sting of public failure. Thanks, Nari, I should go. I need to redo the assignment. She spent the evening in her quarters, converting all her binary answers into the standard galactic notation. The work was tedious, but gave her time to think. Maybe she had been too proud, too unwilling to adapt. If she wanted to succeed here, she would need to learn their ways, not expect them to understand hers. The next morning, she arrived early to submit the revised assignment. To her surprise, Professor Zortix was already in the classroom, working on something at her desk. The professor looked up as Lisa entered. Her scales were a calm blue today. Earth student, you are early. I wanted to submit my revised assignment, Lisa said. Approaching cautiously, Professor Zortix took the tablet Lisa offered. You have converted your answers to standard notation. Yes. Professor, I apologize for the misunderstanding yesterday. The professor studied the tablet for a long moment. Sit down, Earth student. Lisa took the nearest seat, wondering if she was about to be criticized again. Your answers were correct, Professor Zordic said after a moment. Lisa blinked in surprise. I'm sorry? Your original answers in binary form, they were mathematically correct. The professor's scales shifted to a color Lisa hadn't seen before, a pale yellow that her translator didn't explain. I checked them last night. Oh, Lisa said, not sure how to respond. Thank you for telling me. I did not expect this, Professor Zordix admitted. The binary system is rarely used for complex mathematics in most galactic civilizations. It is considered ... inefficient. On Earth, we use it primarily for computing, Lisa explained. But the mathematical principles are the same, just expressed differently. Professor Zortix studied Lisa with all three eyes. Yes, that is precisely the point of the assignment, that mathematical truths remain constant regardless of notation. You demonstrated this in an unexpected way. For a moment, Lisa thought the professor might be apologizing, but the moment passed. I will accept your original submission, Professor Zordic said, returning Lisa's tablet. But in the future, please use standard galactic notation. It will make evaluation more straightforward. Yes, Professor, Lisa said, feeling a small victory despite the qualified acceptance. As other students began to arrive, Professor Zordix added, perhaps sometime you could explain more about Earth's binary applications. It might be instructive. Lisa nodded, trying to hide her surprise. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was recognition, the first real acknowledgement that she might have something valuable to contribute. As she took her seat and prepared for the day's lesson, Lisa felt a new determination. She would master the galactic notation system, but she wouldn't forget the strengths of Earth's mathematical traditions. Maybe there was a place for both here, just as there might be a place for humans in the greater galactic community. News of Lisa's unusual interaction with Professor Zordix spread quickly through the academy. By lunchtime, several students from other classes had approached her in the dining hall, curious about Earth's binary system and the human who had somehow earned a measure of respect from the notoriously difficult Arcturian professor. Is it true you challenged Professor Zortix? Asked a small, furry student that Lisa's translator identified as Pox from the Centauri system. No, Lisa said firmly. I just solved the problems in a different way than expected. But she accepted. Your method, Nari said, joining them at the table. That is rare. Professor Zortix is known for her ... inflexibility. Lisa shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. She recognized that the mathematical principles were sound, even if the notation was different. Still, Pox insisted, eyes wide, no one can remember the last time she changed her mind about anything. Lisa wanted to explain that the professor hadn't really changed her mind, she had simply acknowledged a mathematical fact. But before she could speak, a shadow fell across their table. Velk, the student from the Orion sector who had seemed amused by Lisa's humiliation the day before, stood there with two of his friends. The human who speaks in ones and zeros, he said, his translator making his tone sound mocking. How primitive. Lisa took a deep breath. Is there something you wanted, Velk? I am curious, he said, his four eyes blinking in sequence. If your species is so advanced with binary, why did your planet take so long to develop space travel? My world achieved interstellar flight when yours was still using steam engines. His friends made sounds that translated as laughter. Lisa felt a flash of anger but kept her voice calm. Different species develop along different paths. Earth focused on digital technology and information systems before deep space exploration. Convenient excuse, Velk said. Nari stepped in. The Academy accepted Lisa based on her abilities just like the rest of us. Professor Zordix herself has acknowledged her skills. Has she? Velk asked. Or did she simply take pity on the primitive human? I don't need pity, Lisa said, standing up. She was shorter than Velk by at least a foot, but she met his gaze steadily. and I don't need to prove myself to you. My work speaks for itself." For a moment, tension hung in the air between them. Then Velk made a dismissive gesture. "We shall see. The term has barely begun." After he and his friends left, Lisa sat back, down, her appetite gone. "Do not mind Velk," Pak said, patting her arm with a furry paw. "His species is known for their pride. They believe age equals superiority." "Thanks," Lisa said. "But he's not entirely wrong. Earth is young compared to most worlds in the Alliance." "Young does not mean less valuable," Nari said firmly. "Different perspectives often lead to new discoveries." The conversation shifted to other topics, but Lisa remained quiet, thinking about Velk's words. She knew she belonged at the academy, but proving it to everyone else would be harder than she had imagined. Later that day in advanced mathematical theory class, Professor Zordix surprised everyone. "Before we begin today's lesson," she announced, her scales a calm blue-green, "I would like to address yesterday's discussion of numerical systems." The room grew quiet. The professor rarely revisited previous topics. As you know, the assignment was designed to demonstrate how mathematical truths remain constant regardless of notation. Her three eyes scanned the room. Earth student Lisa's submission in binary format was initially marked as incorrect, but upon further review I have determined that her approach, while unusual, was mathematically valid. Lisa felt every eye in the room turn toward her. "In fact," Professor Zortix continued, "her work demonstrates an important principle of mathematical flexibility, that complex concepts can be expressed in seemingly simple systems. The binary base 2 system, while often associated with primitive computing technology, has an elegant efficiency that even our advanced civilizations can appreciate." Lisa could hardly believe what she was hearing. Was Professor Zortix actually praising Earth's mathematical approach? "Today, I have adjusted our lesson plan. Earth student Lisa will give a brief presentation on binary mathematics and its applications." On her world, Lisa froze. She hadn't prepared anything. She glanced at the professor, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. "Now?" Lisa asked quietly. "Yes," Professor Zortix confirmed. "Consider it an opportunity to educate your peers about Earth's contribution to galactic mathematics." It was a test, Lisa realized. The professor was giving her a chance to prove herself or to fail spectacularly in front of everyone. Slowly, Lisa stood and walked to the front of the room. The holographic display activated, responding to her presence. She took a deep breath and began. "Binary is a base 2 number system that uses only 2 digits, 0 and 1, she started. "On Earth, we use it as the foundation of our computing technology, because electronic components are most stable when representing 2 states, on or off, yes or no, true or false." As she spoke, she used the display to show simple examples, converting decimal numbers to binary and back. The students watched with varying degrees of interest. "But binary isn't just about computers," Lisa continued, growing more confident. "It represents a fundamental way of thinking about problems. Breaking complex systems down to their simplest components allows us to build sophisticated solutions from basic building blocks." She demonstrated how binary could be used to solve some of the problems from their assignment, showing step by step how she had arrived at her answers. "In a way, binary taught humans to think differently," she explained. "When everything must be expressed as yes or no, you learn to see patterns that might otherwise be hidden in more complex notations." As she continued her explanation, Lisa noticed something surprising. The students were actually paying attention. Even Velk, sitting in the back with his friends, was watching with what seemed like genuine interest. "On Earth, we have a saying," Lisa concluded, "sometimes less is more." Binary may seem simple, but that simplicity gives it power and flexibility. It reminds us that even the most complex mathematical truths can be expressed in the most basic language. When she finished, there was a moment of silence. Then, to her surprise, Pax raised a paw. "Could binary be used for the multidimensional mapping problems we're studying now?" the furry alien asked. "Yes," Lisa said, relieved to have a question she could answer. "In fact, quantum computing on Earth uses binary principles but extends them to quantum states, allowing for multiple dimensions of calculation. Several other students asked questions, and Lisa answered each one as clearly as she could. When the impromptu session finally ended, she returned to her seat, feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. An adequate introduction, Professor Zortix sighed, her scales shifting to a color Lisa hadn't seen before, a soft lavender that her translator didn't explain. Perhaps there is more to Earth mathematics than I initially assumed. It wasn't effusive praise, but coming from Professor Zortix, it felt like a major victory. As the regular lesson resumed, Lisa caught Nari giving her a subtle gesture that translated as congratulations. Even more surprising when she glanced back at Velk, he nodded slightly in what seemed like grudging respect. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Lisa felt like she might actually belong there. Not as a token human or a diplomatic necessity, but as a student with something valuable to contribute to the galactic exchange of knowledge. The days following Lisa's presentation marked a subtle but important shift in her academy experience. Students who had previously ignored her now greeted her in the hallways. Several even asked for help understanding binary calculations during study sessions. Lisa found herself explaining Earth's number systems to curious aliens who had never considered the elegance of a base-2 approach. Even Professor Zortix's attitude had changed. She no longer spoke to Lisa with obvious disdain, and twice she had even called on her during class discussions, acknowledging her contributions with a slight nod. "You have made quite an impression," Nari commented as they walked to the library together. "Professor Zortix mentioned your binary approach in her advanced class yesterday." Lisa looked surprised. "Really? What did she say?" "She used it as an example of how different perspectives can lead to elegant solutions," Nari's expression translated as a smile. Coming from her, that is high praise. Lisa felt a warm glow of pride. She had worked hard to prove herself, and it seemed to be paying off, but she knew better than to get too comfortable. One small victory didn't mean complete acceptance. Her caution proved justified the next day when Professor Zortix announced a special project. "The Academy's annual mathematics competition will take place in 3 weeks," she told the class. "Each student will submit an original mathematical proof or application. The top projects will be presented to the Academy Board and visiting dignitaries." From across the Alliance, excited murmurs filled the room. The competition was prestigious, and winners often received offers for advanced research positions after graduation. This year's theme is Mathematical Bridges: How Mathematical Principles Can Connect Different Scientific Disciplines. The professor's scales shifted to a bright gold that Lisa had learned indicated importance. "Your project should demonstrate both mathematical rigor and practical application." Lisa's mind immediately began racing with ideas. This was her chance to truly prove herself, not just to Professor Zortix but to the entire academy. "Students typically work in pairs," the professor continued. "You may choose your partners, or I can assign them." Lisa glanced hopefully at Nari, but before she could speak, Velk approached her desk. "Earth student," he said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, "I propose we work together." Lisa stared at him in surprise. "You want to partner with me? I thought you considered humans primitive." Velk made a gesture that her translator identified as grudging acknowledgement. "Your presentation on binary mathematics was ... informative. I believe our different perspectives could create an interesting project." Lisa hesitated. She didn't entirely trust Velk's sudden interest, but working with a student from an advanced civilization might give her access to knowledge she wouldn't otherwise have. "Okay," she said finally, "we can be partners." Nari gave her a concerned look but said nothing as Velk took the seat beside her. Over the next few days, Lisa and Velk met regularly in the library to discuss project ideas. Despite her initial doubts, Lisa found that Velk was genuinely knowledgeable about mathematics and, once past his prejudice, willing to consider her suggestions. "Your binary approach might work for the computational aspect," he admitted during one session. "The Orion mathematical tradition excels at spatial relationships but struggles with sequential processing." That's where binary shines, Lisa explained. It's perfect for processing information in steps. They eventually settled on a project that combined Earth's binary processing with Orion spatial mathematics to create a new method for navigating higher dimensional spaces. The theory was complex, but if it worked, it could improve interstellar navigation throughout the Alliance. As they worked, Lisa learned more about Velk's world and its ancient mathematical traditions. In turn, she shared stories about Earth's rapid technological development and how binary had revolutionized human computing. Your species accomplished much in a short time, Velk acknowledged one evening as they finalized their calculations. Perhaps age is not always the best measure of advancement. Lisa smiled, recognizing the closest thing to an apology she would likely get from him the night before their project was due. They worked late in one of the Academy's research labs, running final simulations to verify their theory. The fourth-dimensional mapping is still unstable, Velk said, frustration evident in his voice. The calculations are correct, but the system keeps collapsing at higher dimensions. Lisa studied the holographic model floating above their workstation. The beautiful blue lattice structure they had created kept breaking apart whenever they tried to extend it beyond the fourth dimension. Wait, she said suddenly. I think I see the problem. We're trying to process all dimensions simultaneously. But what if we use binary thinking and break it down? One dimension at a time, in sequence, Velk looked skeptical. The dimensional relationships are interconnected. Separating them would lose essential information. Not if we process them in binary pairs, Lisa insisted. First dimension paired with second, then their result paired with the third, and so on, building complexity from simplicity. After some discussion, Velk agreed to try her approach. Lisa recoded their algorithm, applying binary principles to the multidimensional model. As they ran the simulation again, the blue lattice extended smoothly into the fifth dimension. Then the sixth, stable and elegant. It works, Velk said, his four eyes wide with surprise. Your binary approach solved the dimensional collapse. They spent the next hour refining the model, watching in shared amazement as it successfully mapped spaces up to 9 dimensions, far beyond what they had hoped to achieve. We should show Professor Zordix, Lisa suggested, excited by their breakthrough. It was late, but they knew the professor often worked in her private lab until the early hours. They found her analyzing data at her desk, her scales a deep blue of concentration. Professor, Velk said respectfully, we apologize for the interruption, but we've made a discovery we believe is significant. Professor Zordix looked up, her 3 eyes focusing on them. This is unusual timing for a consultation. We've found a new approach to multidimensional mapping, Lisa explained, using binary processing principles combined with Orion spatial mathematics. The professor's scales shifted to a curious yellow. Show me. They transferred their model to the professor's larger display system. As the simulation ran, displaying the elegant way their algorithm navigated through 9 dimensions, Professor Zordix stood completely still, all 3 eyes fixed on the model. You achieved stable mapping through 9 dimensions? She asked. Finally, yes, Professor, Velk confirmed. The key was Lisa's binary processing approach, treating the dimensions in sequential pairs. Professor Zordix studied the model for several more minutes, occasionally asking detailed questions about their methodology. Lisa and Velk explained their process, finishing each other's sentences as they described how they had overcome the dimensional collapse problem. Finally, the professor turned to them, her scales now a deep purple that Lisa had never seen before. This, she said slowly, is genuinely innovative work. You have created something new by combining 2 very different mathematical traditions. Lisa and Velk exchanged a glance of shared pride. I believe, Professor Zordix continued, that your project has excellent prospects in the competition. It embodies the theme of mathematical bridges in both theory and practice. As they left the professor's lab, Lisa felt a surge of accomplishment unlike anything she had experienced before. She had not only proven herself capable of advanced galactic mathematics, But she had shown that Earth's approach, often dismissed as primitive, could solve problems that had stumped older, more established traditions. And perhaps most surprisingly, she had found common ground with Velk, turning an adversary into a collaborator and possibly even a friend. The day of the mathematics competition arrived quickly. The main hall of the academy had been transformed into a showcase arena, with holographic displays set up for each finalist. Representatives from worlds across the Alliance walked among the projects, accompanied by Academy officials in formal attire. Lisa stood nervously beside Velk at their assigned station. Their project, titled Binary Sequential Approach to Multidimensional Navigation, was one of only 10 selected as finalists from hundreds of submissions. "There are members of the Galactic Science Council here," Velk whispered, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in what Lisa had learned was a sign of anxiety. "And ambassadors from at least 20 worlds." Lisa nodded, trying to stay calm. She spotted Professor Zordix across the room, speaking with a group of dignitaries. The professor's scales were a formal gold color, shimmering as she gestured toward the various displays. "Do you think Earth sent a representative?" Velk asked. Lisa smiled. "I doubt it. Earth is still new to the Alliance. We don't have many officials in this sector." "That is unfortunate. Your world should witness your achievement." Lisa looked at him in surprise. Coming from Velk, this was an extraordinary statement. Just weeks ago, he had mocked her and her primitive world. Now he spoke as if her success reflected credit on all of Earth. Before she could respond, a chime sounded, signaling the start of the formal presentations. Each finalist team would have 5 minutes to explain their project to the assembled judges. And guests. 3 teams presented before their turn came. Lisa watched as students from ancient, respected worlds demonstrated their mathematical innovations. Their projects were impressive, showcasing centuries of advanced knowledge. Then it was their turn. As Lisa and Velk stepped onto the central platform, she felt a moment of doubt. How could their work, partly based on Earth's relatively young mathematical tradition, compete with civilizations that had explored the stars when humans were still learning to make fire? The platform rose slightly, giving the audience a clear view of them and their holographic display. Lisa glanced at Velk, who nodded encouragingly. They had practiced their presentation many times, and both knew their parts perfectly. "Honored judges and guests," Velk began, his voice steady. "We present a new approach to multidimensional navigation, combining the spatial mathematics of Orion with the binary processing traditions of Earth." Lisa activated their model, and a beautiful blue lattice structure appeared above them, slowly rotating to show its complex geometry. "Traditional approaches to dimensional navigation treat each dimension as part of a continuous whole," she explained. "But this creates instability beyond the 4th dimension due to computational complexity." She demonstrated the problem by showing how conventional models collapsed when extended to higher dimensions. "Our solution," Velk continued, "applies Earth's binary thinking to the problem. Instead of processing all dimensions simultaneously, we break them down into sequential pairs." Lisa expanded their model, revealing how their algorithm processed dimensional pairs one after another, building complexity from simplicity. The audience watched as the lattice smoothly extended through the 5th dimension, then the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th. "By applying binary principles," Lisa said, "we can maintain stability through 9 dimensions, 3 more than the current navigation systems used by Alliance vessels." A murmur of interest spread through the crowd. 9-dimensional mapping would allow ships to plot more efficient courses through space, potentially reducing travel times between distant systems. "But the true innovation," Velk added, "is not just technological, it is philosophical. By combining the ancient spatial wisdom of Orion with the young but powerful binary approach of Earth, we have created something neither world could have developed alone." As they concluded their presentation, Lisa noticed Professor Zortix watching them intently, her scales now a deep purple color that Lisa had come to recognize as respect, perhaps even admiration. The remaining finalists presented their projects, and then the judges withdrew to make their decision. Lisa and Velk returned to their station, fielding questions from curious attendees. "Your binary approach is fascinating," said a tall, crystalline being that Lisa's translator identified as a representative from the Science Council. "It suggests that young civilizations may offer perspectives that older ones have forgotten or never considered." "That is precisely what we hope to demonstrate," Velk replied, glancing at Lisa with what seemed almost like pride after what felt like hours. The judges returned. The hall grew quiet as the head judge, an ancient being from one of the founding worlds of the Alliance, took the central platform. "All projects demonstrated exceptional mathematical skill," the judge began, "but our decision was unanimous." Lisa held her breath. The winner of this year's mathematics competition, embodying the theme of mathematical bridges, is the binary sequential approach to multidimensional navigation by Velk of Orion and Lisa Keller of Earth. For a moment, Lisa couldn't move. They had won. Her binary approach, the same one that Professor Zortix had initially mocked as primitive, had helped create the winning project in the Academy's most prestigious competition. As she and Velk stepped forward to accept the award, Lisa caught sight of Professor Zortix. The professor gave her a slight nod, the Arcturian equivalent of applause. During the reception that followed, Lisa found herself surrounded by representatives from worlds she had only read about, all interested in learning more about Earth's binary mathematics and how it might apply to their own research. "Earth student," a familiar voice said behind her. Lisa turned to find Professor Zortix standing there, her scales now a calm blue. "Professor," Lisa said respectfully. "Your work with Velk was exceptional," the professor said. "It demonstrates exactly what the Academy was founded to achieve, the exchange of knowledge across different worlds and traditions." "Thank you," Lisa replied. "Though I recall you once called binary charmingly primitive." The professor's scales flickered in what Lisa now recognized as embarrassment, a hasty judgment and an incorrect one. "Age does not always equal superiority, as your work has proven." The professor hesitated, then added, "The Science Council has expressed interest in implementing your navigation algorithm in the next generation of Alliance vessels. They have requested that both you and Velk consider joining the Advanced Research Division after graduation." Lisa stared at her in shock. The Advanced Research Division was the most prestigious scientific body in the Alliance. Humans had never been invited to join before. I would be honored," she managed to say, "as you should be." Professor Zortix's scales shifted to a new color, a warm orange that Lisa's translator identified as approval. "Your binary perspective has proven valuable, Lisa Keller of Earth. Perhaps there is much the Alliance can learn from humanity, just as humanity has much to learn from us." As the professor moved away to speak with other guests, Lisa found herself looking around the grand hall of the Galactic Academy with new eyes. She had come here feeling like an outsider, representing a world many considered too young and primitive to contribute meaningfully to galactic knowledge. Now she stood as a winner of the mathematics competition, with an invitation to join the Advanced Research Division and the respect of students and teachers alike, all because she had stayed true to her training and answered those first problems in binary, the mathematical language that felt most natural to her as a human. Velk joined her, holding 2 glasses of a shimmering blue drink. "To mathematical bridges," he said, offering her one. Lisa smiled and accepted the glass. "And to finding value in different perspectives, no matter how young or old." As they clinked their glasses together, Lisa knew that she had not only proven herself at the Academy, but had opened a door for other humans to follow. Earth's binary thinking had found its place among the stars, one digit at a time.